Hello, welcome to the Feature Spotlight webinar for May. And we've got some interesting stuff to discuss this month. We have a couple of new patches in addition to the ones we talked about last month. We've got some upcoming enhancement and bug fixes that I need to discuss, and we have some new documentation that has been added to the documentation website, all of which we'll discuss today. First of all, let's talk about the new patches and bug fixes. The current version of Process Director with the newest patch is version 6.1.309. As always, you can review the release notes by going to the support website and going to the downloads section, and then there's a link there to the release notes page, and all of the release notes from all of the patches are here. Last month, we talked about the patches up through version 6.1.304. We've added two new patches since then, most of which were bug fixes, but .308 had some enhancements, which we're going to need to talk about. Some of the bug fixes, SAML error messages for Windows users. This was kind of a weird one. If you were shown as a Windows user, but you were logging in via SAML, there was a disconnect. Normally, SAML login users are SAML users, not Windows users. So it's an odd configuration, but it was causing an issue that we fixed. Also, the data list control. We added to the data list control in .300 the ability to select specific columns to show and hide in the data list. So you could draw back like 10 columns from a business value, and you only wanted to show 5 of them. You could just disable 5 of them, and it would only show you 5 of the 10 columns in the business value. But something was happening where that would unexpectedly reset, and all of a sudden the business value was showing you all 10 columns. So it was really a display issue where the properties just were not being respected under some conditions. We fixed that. It was also another issue, and this is an on-premise issue specifically, only with one customer, where they were having a particular issue with the IIS, where IIS would occasionally disconnect from Process Director and restart. We got together with them, figured out what that problem was, and we fixed it. If you are not an on-premise customer, you probably are never going to see that. And if you are an on-premise customer, you probably have never seen it. So it was a weird issue, but we fixed that. Also, if you're an on-premise customer and you are running Process Director as a virtual directory rather than with the default installation, it was a weird issue where the set form data would not allow you to choose fields on the form to set the data to. Not sure what was behind that. And again, it's only for on-premise installs, and only for on-premise installs that were running Process Director as a virtual directory. So those two patches that we've released this last month fixed those bugs. They also included some enhancements, 2 of which I talked about last month as prospective enhancements that were coming. They're now part of .309. For using multi-factor authentication, there is now a property that, when checked, as I showed you last month, will give you a 30-day window before asking to re-authenticate with multi-factor authentication again. So you get you log in once, and you can select, if you choose to allow your users to do so, your users can select to hold off on multi-factor authentication for 30 days, after which it will be required again. Also, the other change that I talked about last month that is now part of .309 is that if you go in as an administrator and you change the permissions on, say, a folder, the way permissions work is when you log in, permissions get applied to you on that login. Now, in previous versions of Process Director, if you went in and made changes to permissions on the fly on your, say, production system. If a user was already logged in and you made a permissions change that would affect that user, those permission changes would not take effect until that user had logged out and then logged back in again. When they log back in again, those permissions will be applied. We've changed the product so that if you do go in and make changes to the permissions and a user who is covered under the previous permission gets removed from that permission, the system will now automatically force that user to log in again. So they will automatically be logged out and they'll log in again. And we're doing that so that when you make permissions changes, it forces the users who are affected to log out and then relog back in again so that those new permissions changes get applied to them. So that eliminates the any possible delta between the time that you make a change to the permissions and an affected user actually sees those changes applied to them. And the only way to do that, since permissions are applied on login, is to force the user to re-authenticate at that point so that the new permissions can be applied immediately. Some enhancements to the patches that were not talked about last month. Number one, the jQuery UI component. We use jQuery fairly extensively. It provides a lot of both UI components for Process Director, plus it gives you the ability, if you decide to use them, to use jQuery calls as JavaScript in your forms, and we do have some customers that do that. But the jQuery has been updated. There are some bug fixes and security enhancements. So we have applied version 1.14.1 of jQuery, which is the most recent version of jQuery UI, and we've applied that to Process Director. So it is currently updated now to the most recent version. Also, we made some cross-site scripting security improvements as well. As you know, cross-site scripting is one of those moving targets for security where, thanks to browser manufacturers and other things, people are always finding new ways of trying to find an exploit in your browsers or what have you. So we are constantly looking at cross-site scripting and making security improvements and updating our security there. So that's one of the things that we did here. So that's the past, or up to now. That's the past to the present. Now let's talk about the future. We're going to apply some tighter security around user searches, and we're going to disable the ability of users to search for other users by default. And I'm primarily talking about in the user administration screen, being able to do the searches by all of the columns in that screen. Now that's going to be disabled by default, and you're just going to have to enable it for the users that you want to enable it for. So basically, this is a security tightening feature. This was requested by a specific customer. Unfortunately, I can't show you this, nor can I show you the next thing, which is adding custom fonts for the online form designer. I did get an update to my server yesterday, but it did not include the first two enhancements here, so I can't actually show them to you. But the second thing that we have added, in addition to this tighter security for user searches, is the ability to add custom fonts for the online form designer. So in your custom folder, which is where your VARS file is and where you put any sort of customizations, if you create a font folder, or is it font or fonts? I think it's fonts. You can just add a folder in custom called fonts, and you can add fonts to that folder. I would have loved to have shown you this, and in fact, I did on the documentation server add that folder, and I think I threw a Google font named DM Sans in there. Unfortunately, I can't show it to you because it doesn't work, but what should happen is when you throw a custom font into the custom/fonts folders, then in the online form designer, that font will appear in the font dropdown that appears in the online form designer. I would love to have been able to show you that. Unfortunately, just didn't get the system updated with those first two things. However, there are some things I can show you, one of which is this. Notice that I have in the set message seen by all users, this did not support system variables. If you were to type in a system variable, it would literally say, if you set this as the message, it's curly bracket cur underscore date time. Well, it no longer does that. If I hit the message seen by all users, the set message seen by all users and the set environment message seen by all users will both convert the system variable, which in this case is the current date time, and will display it in the message already parsed for you. So these two properties, which are on the server control page in the troubleshooting section of IT admin, they now parse system variables so that you can use system variables. This actually happened because we did have a user who wanted to show a message and they wanted to use a system variable. Now, in this case, it was a custom system variable that they had created for their system, but it wouldn't display that custom system variable in the message that they wanted to show. And so, they had a little workaround using a form that worked okay, but we went ahead and changed this so that whenever you use a system variable in one of your environmental message or messages, that it will parse that system variable and show. And that's just part of the ongoing effort that we've been making for, I guess, about the last year or so now, to ensure that all of the text boxes that we have as properties, such as in the custom tasks and in other places, that we can use those to parse system variables. So those system messages now do. There's not much more to add in enhancements, because the one thing that's sort of sucking all of the air out of the balloon is Microsoft 365 CDA, where we are creating the option for those customers who want the additional licensing for CDA to be able to use their Microsoft 365 / Azure / SharePoint setup to be able to share their documents within Microsoft 365, what used to be called Office 365 and has been called that for 28 years now, but we've decided that it's Microsoft 365 now. Well, we didn't decide that, Microsoft did. So it's a bit confusing, but still, rather than using the only Office component for editing documents via CDA, we're still building that option. It's actually in front of a customer or two now for testing purposes, and they're sort of beta testing it to see how it works. We are coming across a lot of wrinkles that Microsoft is imposing, both from the security side and for reasons of sheer cussedness, I suppose, it being Microsoft, where some things just still aren't working quite as expected, or there are some roadblocks that Microsoft has set up for us. So we're working our way around those roadblocks. And so this is still one of the major development efforts that we are putting into. We feel this is an important development effort simply because there are customers who are increasingly sort of concerned about a third party being able to be used for editing documents, especially in cases where those documents have some, let's say for federal customers, there may be some security concerns. And by security, I'm talking about the DoD mainly, so national security concerns. So they want to be able to edit all of those documents inside their own secure Microsoft 365 setup. And of course, just for regular companies, there may be proprietary documents they don't feel comfortable putting on OnlyOffice, irrespective of OnlyOffice's assertions that it's all perfectly secure. They would still prefer to work inside their own system. So this has become a big command for highly regulated companies as well as for government customers. So it has pushed us towards this big development effort in terms of making CDA work inside your Microsoft 365 environment and just eliminating any sort of third-party components that might be used. Some bug fixes. Again, not too many because we've got this major development effort still ongoing with Microsoft 365, which we've talked about for the last couple of months. Radio button lists. There was a weird little display deal that prevented you from, say, bold facing or italicizing the text that gets displayed in the radio button list. So it was a CSS fix required, fairly minor. We did that. Another on-premise issue, this time with SMTP mail encryption. So Process Director wants to encrypt your mail. However, your email server may not be set up that way. So in this case, what we had was a customer whose email server was not set up to impose encryption. And so there's actually a checkbox in the SMTP environment for you to turn encryption on or off, and they had it turned off. And so it was causing a disconnect because on the Process Director side, we were trying to encrypt the email, and on the server side, they were saying, no, we can't accept this email because it's encrypted apparently. So we had to fix that. Again, it was an on-premise issue, an unusual configuration as well. So what we've done is we now check that setting on the email server. If you are set to not encrypt email, then we simply won't try to encrypt the email for you to send. And therefore it eliminates that issue. But again, it's an on-premise issue. So if you're a cloud customer, you can ignore that. Export files to file system custom task. So apparently some of you are using dots in your file names and you're using dots in folder names apparently. Not sure why. Dots are kind of a special thing in Windows, but if you were trying to export a file to file system and there were dots in the name, the dots were being, I think, doubled. So it was actually coming out as ... So the names are coming up as wrong. It was kind of messing a couple of things up. So we've changed the way that we handle those dots in the name. So we fixed that problem. Knowledge use. So let's say that you have an Excel template and you want to export a knowledge view to Excel. Obviously, you have to have an Excel template. It's got to exist in the content list. And that Excel template will be used to be filled out by the contents of the knowledge view. Well, you can have filters, or I'm sorry, formulas in some cells in an Excel template. And we ran into an issue where there were some Excel template formulas that whenever the export occurred, those Excel template formulas were being changed in an unwanted way. And I'm not entirely sure what the full problem was there, but the engineering team went in there and we now handle Excel spreadsheets that have formulas in the template so that we don't overwrite inadvertently those formulas or change those formulas so that they work properly. Finally, we've added some new documentation. Now, this is something that people have asked for a while, and certainly internally, some of our implementers have been begging for it. You may have noticed that there are a lot of icons in the icon chooser. And we never really had a guide for what those different icons were, or indeed how to use those icons. So one of our engineers sort of programmatically generated an icon guide. And as you can see, here is the direct URL to that icon guide. It's part of the implementer's reference. If you actually want to get to it in the documentation, all you have to do is just go to implementation, go to the implementer's guide, and in Process Director user interface, there is the icon chooser topic. And in the icon chooser topic, there is a link to the icon guide. So what the icon guide did, and I had to take the internal version that the developer, one of our developers created, and I had to tweak it so that it matched our documentation styles and stuff. But this is the icon guide. It is searchable technically if you know the icon number. Icon numbers work weird. So we'll just search for 303. So here is icon 1303. It is, in fact, icon 303. So let me explain icon names real quick and how to use them. So there are two types of icons. There are the glyph icons, which is this icon set here. And that really sort of relates, since we're here, I guess I'm going to have to show you sooner or later. So if I can remember where I put it, where I put the documentation form, I believe it's this form right here. And we're just going to go ahead, go into the design, and we're going to also run it. So let me save and run this form and give it a second here for this form to run and load, and we'll take a look at it. So there are two icons here, both of which are puppy dogs. They're both invoked in a different way, and we'll talk about those invocations as we go back to the icon chooser and talk about what I've done here to display it. So there are two types of icons. There are the glyph icons and the font awesome icons. So these are icons provided by two different companies who do two different things. So in Process Director, when you go to the icon chooser, so let's go back to our form here, and let's go here, and let's invoke the icon chooser, and we bring it up. So in built-in icons, these are the glyph icons, and the more built-in icons are the font awesome icons. Maybe we should just name them glyph icons and font awesome icons, but know that that's what they are. And so that's what we're looking at when we're looking in the icon chooser. And that's what we're talking about here when we talk about the glyph icons or the font awesome icons. Now, to distinguish between glyph and font icon, or font awesome, what we've done is we've made a 4-digit code. The last 3 digits are the actual icon number. So this is actually icon 1. So I can actually search 001. No, I can't search 001 because of those trailing zeros. The actual icon number is 1. And of course, that gives me anything with a 1 in it. So it does get a little confusing when you do the search, but the search is basically by the icon numbers, although you can search by class name. So you can also search for BP glyph, but 3, but that gives me BP glyph 3, 30, 31, 32, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not a perfect search thing, but I guess it's as good as we're going to get. But we're basically looking by the class numbers and the icon numbers. The icons all have 4-digit numbers. It's the last 3 numbers that contain the actual icon number. The first number is either a 1 for the glyph icons or a 2 for the font awesome icons. All the icons are listed here, and what we have the CSS class for the icon, the Unicode text representation for that icon, and we also have the SDK get icon HTML call about how to call that particular icon should you do that in script. Now, the CSS class is interesting because you can actually just use the CSS class. And what you actually have to use is this whole set of CSS classes. So like to show this particular icon, you would need to use GB object icon FA BPFAI-2, which is the class, to show this icon. So you can actually do that, and we'll take a look at that in a bit. The classes are a little bit different for the two. So these are the classes for the font awesome icons. These are the classes for the glyph icons. So we've got this BP glyph 3 here. That's the little doggy that is showing on the form. And you can actually just throw in these classes and it will display that icon on the form. So if we go back to our form that we were looking at a minute ago, and we go to the design view, we saw the form work. We saw our two icons, and I'm using two different ways of getting those icons. Now, one is the icon control, which is in the other controls menu of the online form designer, where you can just go in and just type in the icon number, which of course for the doggy is 1003. However, you can also use, as I've done here, an HTML control. And what I've done is I've just created a div object in the form, and I have given it the GB object icons, glyph icons, BP glyph-3 class. There's no content. I mean, I could put some content here. Let's run the form again. We have about 5 minutes before I run out of time here. So let's relax a bit and run the form. We can see this right here, that first icon, which is the one that is generated simply by the empty div class. We can also add some text, and we can't add much because these classes inherently have a size to them. But I could put in, say, doggy, and I can save my form. And we can go back to my form once it saves. And we go, the form has saved. So now I can just go ahead and refresh the form. And it gives me the text doggy right here as part of the class. So it doesn't really affect the icon. The icon still shows. Now, where it gets a little tricky is if I make my text any bigger. So doggies are very fun to have around. Okay. Oh, well, I probably shouldn't have hit all caps, but I guess it doesn't matter. It's just a demo. We'll let it save, and we'll reload this here. So as you can see inside that div tag, and I'd probably have to put some other styling on it to set it as a block so it wouldn't overwrite this. But as you can see, there are some issues with you putting extra text in there. You've got to be judicious about how you do it. It may turn out not the way you want, because these classes provide a very limited size or width for the display. So you would have to play around with that to overwrite that via CSS. Although if you just want to display the icon itself, you don't actually need to have any contents in your div, which is what I originally had in the first place. And we can go back to status quo ante simply by saving our form. I think I hit save and run. So there we are. Now we're back to status quo ante rather than with that. But you can just use those classes to call those icons inside the online form designer. And that's what this enables you to do, is to figure out what the basic class structure is to be able to call those icons. So the icon guide is there. It contains all of them. One final thing about the icon guide, and it's especially true of the font awesome icons. The way this was generated was just by iterating from, 0 to N and just getting all of the possible icon numbers. However, especially for font awesome, not all of the icon numbers are consistent. So in font awesome, their icon numbers skip from 30 to 33. There is no 31 or 32. Therefore, we see these sort of blank rectangles there. You'll see that on this documentation, and that just indicates that there is not actually a font awesome icon that corresponds with this particular number. But because we sort of generated all of these numbers programmatically, it includes every number. And because it is done programmatically and it sort of iterates through, I don't really have a way of skipping things like icon 2031 or 2032, which just don't exist in the font awesome system. There are some instructions up here at the front that sort of replicate in brief what we've talked about so far today, but we now have this icon reference guide available to you, and you can use that to see the icons that you want to see and figure out how to use them in whatever way you want to use them, either by CSS class, Unicode character number, or by calling them via a script. So with that, I think that's all we have. Hold on for a second. Let me reshare this. I may have stopped too early. I don't think I did, but I might have. So let's go back over here. Yeah, I think I covered all of that. That is good. So, oh, well, I guess I was done. I guess I could have stopped sharing. Thanks for watching. That'll do it for this week. I am actually stopping on time. So good on me for my time management this month. Have a great month. For those of you who go to the training webinar, see you on Thursday. For the rest of you, see you next month. So long.